Well, I said win or lose, I would keep doing these live chats. I knew Tech wasn't going to win every game, but I got to say the 38-21 loss to Kansas State in the homecoming game. So obviously a home at the Jones was very disappointing, especially the way Texas Tech had played the previous two games. Um, uh, there's just a lot to discuss, a lot to go over. So if you have your questions, send them my way or comments. This ought to be interesting. Should be pretty lively, even though it's late. Go ahead and send them my way, and we'll discuss the game. We'll get into it. I just got, by the way, just got out of the post-game presser, and then Mighty Joe and I did. We went ahead and recorded our day after podcast. We knew what we wanted to say anyways. So I'll have that on Inside the Red Raiders on Sunday morning as well. He'll have his Jaeger shots. But needless to say, Texas Tech fans are frustrated, and it's understandable. Well, perhaps unsurprisingly, not nearly as lively as after wins. So we'll see. This might be a short chat. So again, if you have a comment, go ahead and send it my way, or a question. Like Bauer said, this game was just a beating. I think we were just ready to move on. Thanks for doing these. Yeah, I mean, just as a sports fan, if my team loses, I mean, I don't want to read a bunch of content or talk about it and all that stuff. So I understand. Not everybody's like that, though. Some people want to talk about it and talk through it, and it's my job, win or lose, to talk about the game. So here I am. But I mean, I think for me, there's a couple of main things that come out of this. Baron Morton's health. Coach McGuire said in the post-game presser that he thinks Morton will be able to start next week against BYU, but he's not sure. If not, it'll be Jake Strong. So we'll have to see, what happens with him. But also, and I think this is the main thing, was Texas Tech's decision to lean heavily on a true freshman quarterback who had never taken a college snap before. That just blew all of us away in the press box. We couldn't believe it. You have Taj Brooks, one of the best players in the Big 12, maybe even in the country. And, he just didn't see the ball on the second half, and I don't understand why. I asked Coach McGuire about that. He was asked about it before my question as well. And, I've got to be honest, I didn't really like his answer. Basically, my main thing is that they're letting the defense dictate what they do instead of imposing their own will on opposing defenses. That's a big part of football. That's a big part of sports, is imposing your will on the other team instead of allowing them to dictate what you do. Now, I get, don't get me wrong, I get the X's and O's in terms of, Kansas State loading up to stop the run and all that. But I mean, again, true freshman playing his first game. I thought he did some good things, but he also threw 3 interceptions, which I don't think that should be a surprise considering how much they were asking from him. I think it was a close game at that point. I think you feed Taj Brooks and you live with the results. I think you probably lose that game as soon as Morton doesn't come back out. But that being said, I think you have to battle with your best chance to win. And I think every week, no matter who you play, the best chance to win is Taj Brooks. He still averaged 6 yards a carry basically against Kansas State. The team averaged 6.5 yards. I know they had some negative plays, but you got to stay with that running game and keep plugging away, especially compared to turning to a guy who he has no experience at the collegiate level. Joe Gutierrez says he does not know what to think about this game. I said, well, I think what I think about it is I picked Baylor, and I got rightfully so after Tech blew him out, called out, which is fine. But I just did not have faith that Texas Tech and Zach Kittley, the offensive coordinator, would stick with the running game. I just feel like he wants a pass-happy offense. Obviously, what he's come from the tree of Cliff Kingsbury and Mike Leach and all that, though they're running different types of offenses, it derives from that. And that's giving the quarterback a lot of control. He's the quarterback's coach as well as the offensive coordinator. I mean, his offense has been geared around quarterbacks. But this specific team this year, and I feel like we talked about this a ton, needs to run the ball in order to be successful. And I don't mean just have good yards. I mean run the ball a lot. Taj Brooks should be getting the ball he should get at least 25 carries. Really, I think he should get 30 carries a game. And I don't want to hear about, will he get banged up? No, I mean, he's trucking people on a consistent basis. He's always falling forward. He's a beast. That's what he is. Give him the ball. The whole team feeds off that. The defense, the offensive line loves it. I think you create a lot of good passing plays because defenses are trying to stop. So I still think pass the ball some, even with Jake Strong, but not, 22 pass attempts in the second half by the freshman. I think you're asking him to do too much. I think that's very unrealistic. And I think it was unrealistic for Tech to win the football game doing that. So my main takeaway is I thought, the week before I picked Baylor because I thought I don't trust Kittley in that he's going to turn all of a sudden go to a ground and pound and give the ball, 30 times to Taj Brooks. Well, they went to Baylor. That's what they did. The whole team fed off it. I feel like it's not that simple, but that is a true statement as well, that the whole team feeds off Taj Brooks's running game, his running ability. And so I was like, all right. I even talked with Kittley about it in the press conference on Monday, and I really liked what he said. Here we come to this game, and Taj, I think he had 11 carries in the first half and almost 60 yards. So that's right about his average for the season, despite Kansas State having the number one rush defense in the Big 12. They were still doing things, and I know the bulk of that came on one carry, but I don't care. You still plugged away at it. You still had some success. And then, but in the second half, you think, okay, well, when I saw that it was going to be Jake Strong, I thought, well, at least they're going to focus on the running game. But inexplicably, they didn't do that. And so the 3 interceptions, it wasn't a surprise to me. And that's no knock on Jake Strong. It's just you're asking way too much from somebody with no experience against the defending Big 12 champs to come in the game like that and just play the hero. I find it very hard to understand, and I didn't really like. I don't feel like I understand it anymore after hearing what Joey McGuire said in his postgame press conference. All right, next question or comment is from D. Wayne, who says Kittley should be demoted. Well, that's not going to happen this year. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the offseason if they continue to struggle on offense. But I don't know that that's going to happen, to be honest. And D-Wayne says, or at least McGuire has to put a leash on him. Yeah, that's what I really want to get from McGuire is like, are you willing or capable of telling him, hey, run the ball here? And he's told me in the past that he has said, like, hey, I'd like to get the ball to this player. I want to do this on play. So, that's possible. And he probably needs to do that. They should have run the ball more in that second half when the game was tied with Taj Brooks. PS says, we have an offense. Yeah, that's a good question. Ernest Tubb said, Kittley put that young kid in a tough spot, asking him to throw down the field every play. The kid was just trying to make something happen. I don't blame him at all. Yeah, I don't blame him. I don't blame Jake Strong at all. He actually did better than I would have thought. That was his first college game as a true freshman. Yes, he was here in the spring. Yes, he's been getting a lot of snaps in practice since Tyler Shuck went down, but still, you're talking about Kansas State. Coming in the second half, a tough situation, and they blitz a lot tonight. Which doesn't mean you can't run the ball just because they're blitzing. I mean, there's some things you could do in the running game to counteract that. But, I mean, they kind of threw him to the wolves, and I'm not surprised at the results other than, I mean, he had that long run that was really nice that he apparently checked into. McGuire said in the postgame presser. And then, he made some good throws. That touchdown throw, I mean, he got hit right when he released it. I don't know how he made that throw, to be honest. But he also had some pretty bad mistakes too. But that's to be expected. From Syntax says, Kitley did so bad with his rookie QB. We have completely forgot about him calling for a long bomb on 4th and 3 from our own side of the field. Yeah, I literally laughed out loud in the press box. And so did Mighty Joe, and I were just kind of, and Jacob Harris, all us on the staff. And really everybody in our area was just like, what is that? What are you doing? It makes no sense. Was it even 4th and 3? I thought it was shorter than that. So that was a terrible call. And you're right. It got kind of lost in the shuffle of some really bad play calls, just calling it like it is. Joe Gutierrez said Brooks looked pissed after an interception, rightfully so. Yeah, I mean, that's something that Joe and I talked about walking to the press conference, walking out of the press conference. Is if I'm on the offensive line, if I'm Brooks, I'm furious that I didn't get the ball more and that they didn't run the ball more. I mean, McGuire's already said that guys like Caleb Rogers, the team captain, starting tackle, who actually is a pretty dang good run blocker, especially when pulling. He's pretty athletic for all the much deserved criticism as a pass blocker in the past. I mean, he's a pretty good run blocker. He's done really well, and so is the offensive line. There's a couple of things they do they are very. It's the most effective thing they do on offense this year by a wide margin. So I'm sure they're very frustrated and furious that it seems like the coaching staff, Kitley, the offense reverted back, even with a third-string true freshman quarterback playing his first game, back to the frustrating, like trying to force this passing game that has not been good with any of the three quarterbacks when you're focusing just on the passing game. So when they're working some passes off the running game after imposing their will with Taj and that offensive line, it's been effective. But when they try and just come out and throw it all over the field, it's been a disaster. I mean, let's just call it like it is. Turnovers, drops, sacks, 3-and-outs. It's been bad. Billy Blueheart says, what concerned me the most about the press conference was the fact that Joey didn't say, yes, we should have run the ball more after you asked your question. The only thing he said was, and perhaps we should have. He said, I'm not saying we shouldn't have. So he didn't, you're right. He didn't say they should have run the ball more. But, and I would be, and perhaps I should have asked this as a follow-up, but we get two questions. And I really wanted to ask how much freedom Jake Strong had. Because to me, that's a key piece of info to know. Is Zach Kelly calling these plays? Is Jake Strong checking in these plays? That's what I feel like I need to know that information. So, but yeah, I didn't like his answer. I'm not, I would tell him that. And McGuire, he's not soft in that he would be offended by it. He'd be like, hey, well, that's your opinion. Kind of like how I get a lot of, I was getting flack when Tech loses. It's like, I was calling plays or something, or Joe was calling plays, and that's fine. People are frustrated, and I get it. But I didn't like his response. They need to stick with what has worked, and that is feeding Taj Brooks the ball as much as he could possibly handle. P.S. said, impossible situation for Strong. Feels like no one but Kitley understood to run the ball. Well, I think you meant everyone but Kitley. Yeah, I think I mentioned this, and this hasn't been posted. It'll be posted in the morning, but in the day after podcast, when Mighty Joe and I were walking from the actual press box to the stairs, the coaches from both coaching staffs were going down the elevator. And so we always take the stairs so we can get to the press conference on time and going down the Jones. But as we were walking by and the coaches were going the elevator, some older Red Raider fan, a woman, we overheard her tell the coaches, run the ball. Well, I think she actually said, run the damn ball. And we couldn't help but chuckle. I mean, everybody can see it. I don't know. And they keep saying, oh, the numbers in the box and some of these things. And all of us, I mean, it's 2023, right? We all understand what they're saying in terms of getting the right looks and checking. I think that's great. I think that's great to have the ability to do that. But I also think when it comes down to it, and we had Lawrence Flugents, the great Lawrence Flugents, and Merv Skurlark, another one of the top defensive players at Texas Tech ever, back from the 80s. So two guys from two different eras who were two of the best players to play at Texas Tech. And I asked them on the air on the Rock and Pregame show, Rock 101.1 FM here in Lubbock. But I asked them, I said, look, we can talk about X's and O's. We can talk about this, that, rule changes, kind of wussifying the game. But it's still a sport about being more physical than the other guy. I mean, would you agree with that? Did you feel like when you played that's what was important, was imposing your will on the other guy? And they said yes. And we talked about how Tech's been doing that with the running game and how it's helping out the defense. So all that. So I feel like everybody sees that this is what should happen. And I felt like Kitley saw it, and he was on the right page too. And then I feel like they didn't trust their personnel to match up against Kansas State when Kansas State sold out to stop the run. And I think that was a mistake, in my opinion. And yeah, it was an impossible situation for Jake Strong. I actually think he has a great view. He has a good arm. He's a great kid. I mean, speaking of the Rock and Pregame radio show, we had him on. His whole family was there. I've interviewed him like 50 times through the recruiting process, maybe more. Great. He seems like, I'm not saying I know him, but he seems like a really great kid, and I know he's highly intelligent. So, we'll have to see down the road. He may start next week in Provo against BYU, though McGuire did say he expects Morton. We'll have to see. I think even if Morton starts, even if Morton comes back, I mean, he's pretty banged up. He's just one big hit away from Strong going back out there. So I very much believe we're going to see more from Jake Strong this year. Dave Patrick says, what happened when we rushed the ball? 8 men were in the box. Well, sometimes they were stopped for no gain, 1 yard, 2 yards. Sometimes they actually had some nice runs. I mean, that's a misnomer. Sometimes you can catch somebody aggressive in a run blitz and run behind that or cut back and spring big plays off run blitz. I'm not saying anything that the Tech coaches don't know. I mean, I really believe that. But I think you can get a little too caught up in the scheme and in certain things instead of just sticking with what you're good at and making them consistently, not just once or twice or 3 times, but throughout the game, stop you. Because that's kind of what happened, Tech. And I know sometimes it was because it was obvious passing games. They sprung, a play here or there, but or passing situations. But it doesn't matter. That Tech was still effective against Kansas State. I mean, they both teams rushed for about 6.5 yards per game, I believe, last time I checked. But Kansas State ran the ball 40 plus times, and Texas Tech ran less than 30 times. I mean, to me, that was the main part of why Kansas State won and Texas Tech lost. Kansas State knows who they are. They believed in what they were doing, and they did it. So they were more effective than Texas Tech. Dave Patrick says Joey needs to be fired. His hand-picked players, his hand-picked position. No, I don't think Joey McGuire should be fired. I think he's great for Texas Tech. The recruiting, he's definitely, there's some learning pains going on right now. And in terms of staff management, his offensive coordinator, and a lot of things. But no, I think Joey McGuire is the right fit for Texas Tech. I think he's a good coach. I like McGuire a lot. Nobody wants to hear me say that after this disappointing loss, but that is the truth. Starter 179 says it's 4th and 2 and you run a Hail Mary pass play. Spare me on the too many guys in the box BS. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a Hail Mary, but it was a deep pass. It was a one-on-one shot, and there was the chances of success on that on a 4th and 2 were slim to none, and it wasn't successful. And I agree on the spare me on the too many guys in the box stuff. I mean, that's what I've been saying here in this chat. I agree with you. Dave Patrick says 8 people in the box, you cannot run the ball like that. Well, that's your opinion. PS says this is year 2. Those that think Joey needs to be fired needs to take a step back. Yeah, I think I agree. I mean, look, I never want to tell a fan how they should be or what to do with their fandom, but I disagree that Joey McGuire should be fired. No. Starter 179 says, if you're supposed to be the toughest, hardest working program, then don't shy away from the run. Joey had a lot of growing to do as a coach because this is not good. Yeah, that's what I just said. I mean, he does still have some growing pains. And I mean, he's going through some growing pains, and he has some, some things he can improve on for sure. And I know I can say that about myself. That's for sure. I think a lot of us can say that, but I mean, he's getting paid good money. He has a lot of responsibility. A lot of people's businesses depend on Texas Tech football, and that's just the truth of it. And so far, and it looked like they were turning things around, but tonight it was a big loss. I mean, that's just the truth. Ooh, let's see. Ernest Tubb said, I've heard lots of criticism on the defense, but when you keep those guys out on the field all game, what else would you expect? Running the ball and controlling the clock has helped us big time. Yeah, I agree. And that's what we were starting to see there was another comment about, playing complementary football and all that. Yeah, they started to do that. I mean, that first thing, Kansas State's a better team than both Houston and Baylor. But we just saw Houston upset West Virginia. I mean, that was possible. That's possible. And I think if Tech had played with this run first, be physical, feed the ball to Taj type of approach, I think they would have won the games over Wyoming and West Virginia. I mean, I really believe that. Nobody's going to be able to convince me otherwise. I think the ineffectiveness of the passing game, and especially that West Virginia game, I mean, the passing game was about as worse as I've ever seen at Texas Tech. We're right up there. So, I mean, I agree with you. Got to play complementary football, especially this team this season. When you have that stud back there and Taj Brooks feeding the ball, your offensive line likes it. Obviously, and that's pretty common. Offensive linemen like to be aggressive and get to go after him, but they are so much more effective pass or run blocking than pass blocking. Then that's what you got to do, and that will help the defense. And I even asked Coach Defensive Coordinator Tim DeRuyter on Monday about that. Like, what do you think about them running the ball and this type of approach? And he said it has helped the defense. They do like Tech having 5-minute drives instead of like 30-second-minute drives or 1-minute drives, where they actually have time to make adjustments on the sideline before going back out there. So, I mean, it makes sense. Luke Gerard says, my family lives in Kansas, but we absolutely loathe Kansas State. We drove 700 miles to see Tech play. It's going to be a long, miserable drive back in the morning. Oh, I'm sorry, man. It's tough to be a fan. And I tell you what, this is what I tell my son anyways. It's tough. Like, there's a lot of people that hop around like, oh, they're a Kansas City Chiefs fan. They just won the Super Bowl. That's probably a bad example with Texas Tech. Denver Nuggets fan because they just won the championship one year. Then they'll be a Golden State fan, whatever. That's not the way to do it, man. You have a team. You stick by them. Some are easier than others. Some are much tougher. Texas Tech is a tough team to stick and be loyal to, but you do it. And it makes the actual successes that much sweeter because you're going through nights like tonight and a situation like you're having to do drive back. Be safe on the road, you and your family. And that's pretty cool, though, that I hope y'all got something out of it. I hope y'all made some memories on this trip anyways, despite the bad performance. All right. From Syntex said, what is wiser, running against 8 men in the box or continuing to have a true freshman quarterback who is throwing interceptions? Yeah, I mean, I literally made the joke that I was like, we should start doing bets on which Kansas State player is going to pick off the next pass because it was just happening. I mean, and that's pretty easy to you don't have to be an expert or a genius or anything to see that and figure out that Jake Strong was probably going to turn the ball over, throwing the ball over the yard, not because of him, per se, like where he's not a talented player, or he's not a good player, or he doesn't have a bright future, but because it was his first game as a true freshman, getting thrown out into a Big 12 game. Of course, running the ball with Taj Brooks, even if Kansas State is loading up, which is probably going to happen because of your injury situation at quarterback, and grind out the win however you can. It was a close game. I don't think necessarily Tech would have won at that point with Barron going out, but it would have given you a much better chance, in my humble opinion, than what they did. Joel Heim said, can we talk about the injuries? The team has beat up some. Yeah, I mean, can you ask me specific players? I know Mason Tharp missed another game. CJ Baskerville strained some ligaments in his knee. And he said that was at the end of – McGuire said that was at the end of the win at Baylor. Basically, you know, he's going to miss some time. Michael Dingle, I can't remember what he did. But I think it looks like they're going to end up redshirting. He's already played in his 4 games, so they're going to retain that year of eligibility. I mean, hopefully Jacob Rodriguez comes back for the BYU game, and he'll take those snaps at inside linebacker. Cole Spencer, the opening day and the first several games starting left guard, he's still on a scooter. He's out. I think it's an ankle, but I'm not sure on that. It's a leg injury. And Jacoby Jackson's been playing for him, and I think he's done a pretty good job. I really like Jacoby Jackson. So in terms of on the offensive line, I think you have the most depth at guard. So Landon Peterson's another guy who started and played well in games for you, so he can play if need be. But Jacoby Jackson's played well for Cole Spencer. I'm trying to think about anybody else off the top of my head. So if you come up with anybody specific that I didn't mention, then please throw it my way, and I'll do my best. Starter 179 says, let's see. McGuire seems way too happy go lucky in the press conference. Kleiman was very honest after the loss in Stillwater about his program, but Joey refuses to admit their bad play calling. Is it ego? Yeah, I think you are. I don't agree with what you're saying all the way. I think I did not like his answer about not giving the ball to Taj. I think it was an oversimplification. If he really believes that they're just that much smarter than everybody can see that running the ball has helped. Yes, they could take advantage of some of of what Kansas State was doing in terms of being aggressive to try and stop the run, but still sticking with the run to keep them honest. I mean, if he really doesn't believe that, I would be shocked. So I didn't really like his answer. And obviously what they did. Now, in terms of happy-go-lucky, he looked very sullen and sad, and he looked depleted. I'm on a much lesser scale, and it certainly doesn't matter a fraction as much. Like I had that same thing, like throughout the week is like you work, you go. I have, the radio show, and we do all this content. By the time the game's over, I'm like, man, I'm spent. It's like you've laid the cards on the table and you put forth a lot of effort and time to do something. And so when it's done, it's just kind of like, and I get the same feeling, obviously, for a better reason and to a much bigger degree from him in the post-game press conference. I don't see him as happy-go-lucky, to be honest. I think he tries to – McGuire is very big on being who you are no matter what, the good times and the bad times. But, no, he was clearly upset tonight. I think about as upset as I've seen him in terms of about a win or a loss. I mean, there's been some injuries or some bad things that have happened that I've seen him be, more somber about, but like Bryce Ramirez breaking his leg, stuff like that. Tyler Shuck getting hurt again. He was somber about that. But tonight was about as down as I've seen him after a loss, after a game, period, in a year and a half. Starter 179 wants me to ask next press conference about Rusty Stats' snaps. Yeah, that's a surprise to me. They haven't been he hasn't been consistently good at his snaps. And come on, I'm not saying it's so easy what he does. I'm just saying that's the most basic play. Like every play is started with a snap. So I mean, if you can't get that down on a consistent basis, that's not a good start to your offense. Billy Blueheart wants to know, do I think Tech can make a bowl game? Yes, I think BYU game is very winnable. I think the UCF game is very winnable. The last time I saw that was before tonight now. Tech was actually favored in ESPN's Football Power Index also against TCU at home, which is after the bye, after BYU and then the bye. And then at Kansas, their Tech was favored. So they lost to Oklahoma State tonight as well. So, I mean, you have 3 wins. There's 4 clear opportunities, and you have Texas, which sounds laughable right now in Austin. But, I mean, we've seen those games where in college football where that kind of stuff happens. So do I think Tech will make a bowl game? Yes. But do I think we're going to be satisfied with the end result given all the expectations going into the season? No, I do not. I mean, GP says Killy looks like he's trying to drive a Formula One race car in a demolition derby. I mean, that's a good analogy. I agree with you. Oh, Jason Baumgartner says, would you rather take losing to K-State or blowing a 29-point lead to Stanford? I'm definitely going to go with the loss to K-State. I mean, what is that, 8 in a row, 12 of 13? I guess. I mean, I know Tech fans are still frustrated, obviously, by it, and I'm frustrated by the game tonight. But, I mean, that's just something that's been a thing. Kansas State has owned Texas Tech for 13 years, basically, other than 2015. And guess what? The 2 completely different team scenarios, but Tech won that game because DeAndre Washington, the offensive line, took over. Tech ran for over 250-something yards. And that was a team coached by Cliff Kingsbury, obviously a guy who likes to throw the ball around. All right. Dave Patrick says, why does Tech have a coach that broadcasts the injuries? He believes in giving out information when he knows guys are going to be out. There was a lot of guys they kept under wraps in terms of, hey, they didn't want people to report it and stuff like that. So, I mean, he gives out information, don't get me wrong. And it's appreciated by us media folks. And I think a lot of the fans, but he doesn't give out all the information. Trust me. Don't think he does that. Cowboys season says, sorry, just got here, but only a 2-possession game. The whole quarter left and you're airing it out like you're down 20. I don't understand. Run the ball. You have a freshman QB and the best running back in the Big 12. I mean, you said it better than I did. Other than I think it was even closer to that earlier in the third quarter. So, I mean, it made very little sense to me. We could keep talking about that one part of it, but I agree with you. Ooh. All right. Can this program evolve to play complementary football, or is Texas Tech stuck in this up-tempo offense mentality with Kidley? I mean, that's a good question. I don't know. I was skeptical going into Baylor, but they for that week they proved me wrong, and I was starting to buy in that I really believed that they could evolve, and that's what they were going to do moving forward. But now that's been blown out of the water. Like I'm going to be skeptical. Even if they go run the ball 50 times in Provo and win big against BYU, I'm still going to be skeptical after the bye week going against TCU. I'm going to have to see it every week. I'm not going to just definitely buy in and believe that that's what they're going to do just because they've done it one week or they say all the right things. I'm going to remain skeptical of that they're going to be able to do that. Jason says, appreciate the content and chats after game. Good decompression time for his fans. I'm glad. I said when I started off the chat that, I'm a guy as a sports fan that if my team loses, I got to block it out. I got to go do something completely different. I don't want to read about it. I don't want to think about it, but not everyone is like that. Some people need to decompress, talk through it. And so here we are. I'm glad you get something out of it. And I do too, actually, since it's my job, so I'm going to do it. But Also, I think it does. I mean, y'all bring up some good points. I'm not going to sit here and think, oh, these fans, they don't know anything. I don't feel like that at all. I mean, I feel like most of us can see what we believe needs to happen and what's going on, and we're frustrated that when we don't see it, and it leads to losses. Okay. Billy Blueheart said Donovan Smith and Alan Bowman balled out today. Well, congrats to them. I'm a huge Donovan Smith fan, actually. I know that it's not always pretty. He could be inconsistent, but he won some big games for Texas Tech here. I mean, went over Texas, went over Houston, by the way, in double overtime. He had big games. Went over Iowa State a couple of years ago, the one at home when Garibay kicked that 62-yarder. He made some big throws in that game as well, some big plays. So and then I watched him at Friendship when he was at Friendship High School here his senior year. Some remarkable games, performances. So like I said, I know he's not for everyone. He had some really bad games at Texas Tech, but man, he won some big games too. I think he's a good quarterback in the right system. And Alan Bowman, I mean, how old is he now, man? I mean, congrats to him just for sticking it out after those injuries. But that's crazy that he's still playing. I mean, he's been around forever. From Tech says, we appear to confuse ourselves more with the up-tempo than we confuse our opponents. Yeah, I'm not as big of a fan. Like, teams that do up-tempo, they seem to be have so much pride in it. And it seems like in the decade I've been covering Texas Tech, very rarely is it actually effective. I have to agree with you. Starter 179 says, Jared, can you please ask in the Monday press conference why Joey doesn't want to play complimentary football and always runs tempo? Well, here's the thing. I can ask questions. I'm not going to lead. That's a leading question. And I get that a lot. People want me to make statements with my questions. And I realize there are a lot of journalists out there who do that. I know it sells in terms of making money and stuff like that. But I don't believe in that. I'm going to try and do what I believe is right. Now, I will ask tough questions, what I believe to be tough questions. I will ask him about those kind of things. I asked him after the game tonight, don't you think – I kind of did a leading question, actually, now I say it, because I was so incredulous. But just basically, was there a thought that maybe you should give the ball to Taj and help settle down the true freshman quarterback? And like we talked about, I didn't like his answer. So I guess I could ask him again, but if I asked him that, it's not like he's going to say, "Oh, well, you're right. Kitley doesn't like complimentary football." They're just going to you just got to ask it in a certain way, not because anybody's scared of anything, but just to get the actual answer. I want to get the information. That's my goal. I'm not somebody was saying to me today, oh, you can't say this because you're scared of losing your access. That's not a thing. I literally wrote a free story saying Texas Tech should fire Kingsbury immediately. And then no one threatened me that with losing my access. And that was 9 years ago or 8 years ago or something like that. No, there's a certain way you do things, and that affords me an ability to be more candid, I think, than someone that they don't know and they don't know is going to try and do certain thing do this job with a certain kind of principle. At least in my opinion, I try to do that. So I'll ask about that for sure. I'm not going to not ask about that again, but I don't know. I need to think about it. Tomorrow's kind of a cooling off day I spent with my son, and I'm going to think about definitely what I'm going to be asking him on Monday for all the coaches, for McGuire and the coordinators. Sean Turner says, yes, hate the up-tempo. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not going to lie. I get it. Again, PS says Bowman has 8 degrees. He's got to, right? For real, is he 30? I went and saw him play. Where did he play? Was it Grapevine? Where did he go to high school? I think it was Grapevine. Anyways, I went and saw him play at high school 8 years ago or something. Literally, I think it was either 2014 or 2015. It's crazy that he's still playing. Part of that's COVID, and then all the, I don't know, the extra eligibility with that. But good for him that he can play and, he's having success. And again, it's commendable him coming back from his lungs being punctured. That's crazy. Khalid says, Khalid, I can't say your last name, man. I'm sorry. It's late. He says, I apologize for that. He says, Kitley just isn't good. He doesn't know how to call a game to the strengths of his personnel. I mean, it's hard to disagree with that. I think that is the main problem is that's coaching, right? Is being able to adapt and put your players, no matter if it doesn't fit with like your usual scheme, but put your players in the best position to be successful on a consistent basis. I mean, that's it. That's especially a coordinator. And that's what you do. And I feel like Tim DeRuyter does a really good job of that. I really do. Like, I'm a huge fan of the defensive coordinator. I know they gave up 270 yards rushing tonight. So it's not like they had a stellar performance, but overall, like, this is the best defensive coordinator that Texas Tech's had in the decade I've been here. Now, that's not saying a whole lot, but I think he's really good. I think he does a good job of putting his guys in a good position to have success. Ernest Tubb said, did McGuire actually hire Kitley, or was he a donor here? Donor hire, excuse me. He says he just does not see the connection they would have. He's often wrong now. Well, I mean, look, Kitley, first off, I don't know. I don't have concrete info. I will say this. There's no way that Texas Tech hired an offensive coordinator and forced that on Joey McGuire without him saying okay on it. I've known McGuire. I've known some of the other guys on the staff, at least a little bit, had interaction and worked with them some back in the day when I was at the 4-Star Telegram, going back a long time. And there's just no way. I put a lot of money on saying there's no way it was just forced on McGuire and he just said, okay, I'll do whatever. Yeah, I just don't believe that. I know there are some scenarios out there where that could happen. So I'm not saying this is just impossible. I just don't see that happening with McGuire. I really believe that. And also Kitley, remember, like, he was the year he was hired, he was the national offensive coordinator of the year for 24/7 Sports, who I work for, by the way. So I'm not going to be like, oh, that was a terrible award. I mean, now people say, hey, you had Bailey Zappi. Well, I mean, that's part of it. I mean, good coaches help players, great players make coaches look great. I mean, that's just kind of the way sports are. I mean, it's true. Phil Jackson was probably great because he had great players like Michael Jordan and Shaq and Kobe and Scottie Pippen. But also, Jordan didn't win a championship without Phil Jackson as well. So, I mean, I'm not saying he wouldn't have. I'm just saying they tend to go hand in hand when teams win at a high level. And Kitley and Bailey Zappi did some really good things together at Western Kentucky. And he was like the up-and-coming hot young offensive coordinator. So, I mean, it made sense on some certain levels. But we did say, like, McGuire, when he was hired, said complimentary football. We're going to play complimentary football. That's what we're going to do. We're going to play defense. We're going to run the ball. We're going to be physical. And so when Kitley was hired, that didn't seem like it would, like, that jived. But he said that they still would run the ball, that Kitley didn't care. Kitley told me on Monday that, look, I'd rather win 14 to 10 than lose 52 to 49. He even mentioned that he had been a part of a lot of those kind of games and he wasn't interested in that. And I'm not saying that's what he was going for tonight, but the opportunity to win a grinded out game, I think, was there, and it was missed. And instead, those interceptions they were the nail in the coffin, and I think it took the air out. I was there. The whole stadium, took the air out of the whole stadium, the team, everything. Somebody on here mentioned Taj Brooks being upset. Yeah. I mean, I think everybody was upset. Well, what are you doing? Come on. Yes, Cowboy season. I think this is a good point. And I lost my place. But Cowboy season said that the defense got ran all over too. Yeah, they did. Now, the defense didn't play well overall. I think, though, they had played good enough up to the point where those turnovers started happening that they were still in the game. Now, did they play great? I mean, they didn't play anything like they did against Baylor with 6 sacks and holding the team to, 17 yards rushing, something like that. But I think they were competing. They were in the game. And I don't think the offense did him any favors by turning the ball over so much. Joe Gutierrez says, would like to know why they're forcing the big play instead of playing for first downs. I think what they just thought in covering football specifically, more than a lot of other sports, in my opinion. Maybe it's because I probably covered football and basketball more than anything, but I mean, I've covered basically all sports I could think of out there. But in covering football, NFL down, and a lot of high school football and college football, sometimes coaches get tunnel vision, and they've had it in their head. They've been saying it publicly. I know, which means they've been saying it behind the scenes as well. But that they were waiting for a team to sell out to sell out against Texas Tech's run and stop the run, and they were going to hit some big plays in the passing game. So I think that's what they were looking to do. I think that was the thought process, I believe. And I'm not trying to defend them, but that's the only sense I can make out of it. To me, though, you have to adapt. The second Morton can't play, Jake Strong comes in. Yes, maybe on first down here or there, you trick them with the RPO or play action or whatever. But ultimately, you got to ground and pound, try and grind out a win the best way you can. Hope you get a break here or there. And Tech was getting some breaks. I mean, that targeting call, I'm not saying it wasn't targeting, but just that was such a big swing play in that Kansas State was going to get the ball deep in Tech's territory. Looks like they were going to add to the lead. Instead, Tech, gets that, they get that penalty and they march down the field and score right before the half. So, I mean, there were some other plays like the fourth down false start Kansas State had right before they kicked it and Jake Strong led them on that 9-yard drive. I mean, Tech was getting some breaks. It wasn't one of those games where it was like, man, just nothing's going right. It wasn't like that. But I mean, the minute you started trying to throw it all over the field instead of, sticking with Taj, the game was over. It's game over, man, from that point on. Okay, you keep saying they can't pick good players. I disagree, Dave Patrick. I mean, they're recruiting about as good as ever. Micah Hudson, 5-star receiver, by the way, he was on campus. Will Hammond, several other players. They had the top class in the future Big 12 out of all 16 teams for the 2024 class. I disagree. They have good players on this team and more coming. Oh, now I'm a mouthpiece for Tech. That's fine. I respect your opinion. I think Tech would disagree with you on that, and I certainly disagree with you on that, but that's fine. From Syntex said that the Bowman punctured lung was 2 coaches ago. He outlasted Kingsbury's entire NFL coaching career. Wow, I guess that's true. Yeah. Jason says he's with me. He's a big fan of DeRuiter. Yeah, that dude could coach, man. He's a good football coach. Danamus Maximus Decimus Meridius. Maximus, are you not entertained? Said the Tech's defense was schooled by a backup quarterback, but everyone can tell K-State prepared him in case he was called up. But Kidley and McGuire did nothing to prepare this team. Forget calling out Strong. I'm not calling out Strong, by the way. That backup quarterback, Avery Johnson, was a 4-star recruit, one of the biggest recruits Kansas State's gotten in some time. If you ask most of the Kansas State fans out there, they were clamoring for him over Howard. That guy's a special talent. Now, should Tech have allowed him to run for 5 touchdowns? No. But and Tech was schooled by Kansas State. That's a true story. But saying just he's a backup quarterback, I think that's kind of painting it in a inaccurate light, in my opinion. Yeah, that's some good points there. Cowboy season says, Dave, going at you, Jerry, you better boot him. I'm not going to boot him. I'm not scared. That's fine. Whatever. Trust me, man. like a lot of you out there, I've been through some things in my life. This ain't going to be the thing that has me losing sleep or upset or whatever. That's fine. He has his opinion. I respect it. Team Crop Duster says, which I like your name. That's funny. He says you can definitely see Strong's raw talent. Yeah, I mean, and it's beyond that. But I think he has a lot of potential. I like Jake Strong a lot, and I have liked him. It was a very challenging situation to. It was a big ask asking him to try and do what he was asked to do tonight. That's ridiculous. Jason says he's definitely not a mouthpiece for Tech. Let me talk about some. Thank you for saying that. Gerald Devereaux says Will Hammond is going to be the starter. Chances that Micah decommits. My thoughts. That was horrible from Kitley. Yeah. I mentioned that Merv Skurlark was on the radio show today, and on the air, we were talking about, he had heard me do a recruiting segment about some of the guys in town, including Micah. And he said, look, I know Micah's dad who played at Tech. He's not going Mike is coming to Texas Tech. Don't worry about that. He is as solid as it gets. So there you go. That's better than any information I could give you. But I definitely believe. Now, is anything 100%? It's recruiting? No. But I definitely believe that Michael Hudson will be in scarlet and black next season. Let's see. You know what? I've gone 51 minutes again. I've had a good time. I know despite the result, I think we have talked some things out. Y'all had some good, most of y'all had some good comments on here. It's a week-to-week proposition. That's what college football is. Let's see what Texas Tech does in Provo against BYU. But for now, thank y'all for joining in. Thanks for watching, and until next time.